Chapter 1, The Cup of Water. The colony had a smell Daniel Cole never got used to. Dust, ozone, and whatever the locals cooked in their odd clay stoves, something halfway between cinnamon and burnt rubber. He leaned on the frame of his workshop, sipping coffee thick enough to strip paint, and squinted across the street. That's when he noticed the kid. Small. Fragile. Skin like cracked parchment, scales dulled from dehydration. The little alien shuffled through the dirt road, clutching its stomach. Most colonists avoided the stragglers. Easy rule of survival, don't feed what might later bite. Daniel ignored that rule the same way he ignored the one about not drinking coffee after midnight. He set his mug on the railing, walked down, and crouched in front of the child. "You look about 3 bad days away from a funeral, kid." The alien blinked at him with glassy eyes, throat rasping. It didn't speak standard, but Daniel didn't need a translator. He pulled a battered canteen from his belt and tipped it toward the kid. "Water. Universal miracle drug. Tastes better than my coffee, I promise." The child hesitated, sniffed the air, then reached with trembling claws. Daniel guided the canteen to its mouth. It drank in greedy gulps, coughing, then drank more. A noise escaped it, something between a chirp and a sob. "Easy there," Daniel said, steadying the canteen. "Don't drown yourself. I'm not CPR certified for your species." When it finished, the cub wiped its mouth with the back of a scaled hand and stared at him as if he'd performed sorcery. It placed a tiny clawed palm against its chest, then against his. A gesture of thanks, maybe, or a pact. Daniel shrugged. "No problem. Hydration's free. Well, except at baseball stadiums." The kid didn't get the joke. It gave him one last reverent look and scrambled off into the alleys, tail dragging behind like a rope. Daniel returned to his workshop porch, picked up his mug, and muttered, "If it comes back selling cookies, I'm buying Thin Mints." The day moved on in typical colonial fashion, slow commerce, loud machinery, the constant thrum of orbital shuttles overhead. Daniel lost himself in repairing a busted atmospheric regulator, hands blackened with grease. He liked the rhythm of fixing things. Machines made sense, unlike politics or people. By nightfall, the colony had gone quiet. Most shutters closed, lamps dimmed. Only the low hum of the generator kept him company. He reheated leftovers, poured another coffee, and considered calling it a night. Then the ground shook. At first he thought it was an equipment malfunction, maybe the generator blowing a fuse. But the vibration grew, rattling tools off shelves. Outside, dogs howled and lights flickered. The sky tore open with a sound like splitting steel. Daniel set down his mug, sighed, and muttered, "Well, that's not the weather." Above the settlement, a ship descended. Not a transport, not corporate. Sleek, predatory, lit with arcs of blue fire. It slowed as if savoring the fear below. Dust spiraled into choking clouds as landing thrusters roared. Colonists peeked from windows, some prayed, some locked their doors. Daniel stayed on his porch, arms folded, watching with the same calm he'd use for a rainstorm. The ship settled at the edge of the street. A ramp extended, glowing faintly. Figures emerged, tall, armored, feline in their poise. Warriors, each carrying weapons designed to intimidate more than kill. They fanned out, scanning the street. Their eyes glowed amber in the dim light. Then she appeared. The Queen. She didn't need a crown, her bearing was enough. Tall, sculpted features sharp as glass, skin like burnished bronze, eyes that caught and reflected every light. She moved with slow, deliberate grace, each step claiming ground as if the planet itself bent to her. Even the warriors bowed their heads as she descended. Daniel, still leaning on the doorframe, lifted his mug again. The coffee had gone cold. He sipped anyway. The Queen stopped a dozen paces from him. Silence rippled through the street. Even the generators seemed to hold their breath. She studied him with a gaze equal parts curiosity and danger. Finally, she spoke, her voice smooth but heavy, like velvet concealing steel. "Human," she said, the word tasting strange in her mouth. "Do you know what you have done?" Daniel tilted his head, feigning thought. Then he gave her a lopsided smile. "Let's see, fixed an air regulator, burned dinner, and gave a thirsty kid some water. Unless hydration's a crime around here, I'm guessing you're here for the last one." A murmur ran through the warriors. The Queen's eyes narrowed. "That child is mine." Daniel arched a brow. "Well, Your Majesty, you might want to teach your kid not to wander into traffic. Good way to get stepped on." Her expression didn't change, but the air seemed to grow heavier. She stepped closer, eyes never leaving his. "Among my people," she said, "to give water is to claim bond. You have bound yourself to my bloodline. To me." Daniel let the silence hang for a beat. Then he sipped his coffee and said, "Where I come from, we call that hospitality. Usually it doesn't come with armed escorts and dramatic lighting, though I appreciate the effort." One of the warriors snarled, stepping forward. The Queen raised a hand, stopping him. Her gaze sharpened. "You joke. You hide behind small words. But I see something in your eyes. You are not afraid." Daniel shrugged. "Fear's overrated. Does it make the coffee taste better?" She studied him as though peeling back layers of disguise. Her people shifted uneasily. The longer she stared, the more the balance of power in the street seemed to tilt. Finally, she spoke again, voice low. "Tell me, human, what are you really?" Daniel smiled, slow and polite, the kind of smile that carried more questions than answers. "Force of habit, Your Majesty. Occupational hazard. Let's just say, hydration isn't the only survival trick we've mastered." The silence that followed was not the silence of peace. It was the silence before storms. And Daniel drank his cold coffee like he had all the time in the world. Chapter 2, A Bond Misunderstood. The Queen did not blink. She regarded Daniel as if cataloging him for dissection. Around her, the warriors shifted uneasily, weapons clutched tighter. A predator knows when another predator is in the room, even if it wears a smile and drinks coffee from a chipped mug. Daniel, unfazed, lifted that mug again. "I should warn you, Majesty, staring contests aren't covered in my contract. Though if you'd like to arm wrestle, I'll clear the table." A few warriors hissed at the insolence. The Queen silenced them with a subtle flick of her fingers. Her voice slid into the silence like a blade into velvet. "You offered my child water. In our law, water given in need binds families, binds lives. You are bound to me." Daniel let that hang a moment. Then he chuckled. "Well, that's new. Where I'm from, a kid asks for water, you give it, and the worst you get is a sticky cup left in the sink. Nobody shows up declaring interstellar matrimony." The warriors bristled again, but the Queen was studying him, not their outrage. "You jest because you do not understand." "No," Daniel said softly, "I joke because I understand too well. Keeps people guessing." Her eyes narrowed at that. She had expected fear or confusion, not a man who deflected with humor like a duelist parrying with grace. Behind her, a warrior general finally lost patience. He stepped forward, towering, armored, blade gleaming under street lamps. "This creature mocks us. Let me silence him." Daniel didn't move. He simply looked at the general as one might look at a loud neighbor's barking dog. "Funny thing, General," he said evenly, "where I come from, the last guy who tried to silence me wound up needing dental reconstruction. And that was just over bad karaoke. The general snarled, but the queen raised her hand again. Her gaze never left Daniel. Strange human. Do you not see the danger you stand in? Oh, I see it. Daniel leaned against the doorframe, casual as gravity. Big cats with bigger swords, intimidating armor, a queen who could probably command planets with a glance. Yeah, I see it. I just don't sweat it. Her lips curved, faint, almost involuntary. And why not? Because, Daniel said, sipping his coffee, if danger scared us off, humans wouldn't have made it out of caves. That silenced even the warriors. The queen motioned, and her entourage shifted back, forming a semicircle around them. She stepped closer, her presence filling the space. Daniel could smell something like crushed flowers and ozone. What do your people call you? She asked. Daniel Cole, he replied. Most folks just call me Dan. Or hey, fix this, depending on how broken their machines are. You are no simple mechanic, she said. Daniel shrugged. I tinker. I fix. Sometimes I break, if the situation calls for it. Her gaze sharpened. You measure the positions of my guards. You note the weight of their weapons. You watch the angles of their stances. You hide it behind jokes, but you see everything. He gave her a thin smile. Old habits. Hard to shake. The warriors murmured again, unnerved. The queen's expression, however, softened with interest rather than suspicion. You carry the scent of war. Daniel let out a quiet laugh. You should smell my laundry room. The queen circled him now, as if evaluating a specimen. You humans, the archives speak little of you. A frontier species, scattered, still grasping for relevance. Yet you stand here without fear. Daniel kept his eyes forward. Relevance is overrated. We don't need to be in the archives. We prefer being underestimated. The queen stopped in front of him. Underestimation is dangerous. For you? Maybe. He let the words hang with polite weight, like an offhand remark at a dinner table that cut deeper than a knife. Her advisor, a thin, silver-scaled creature, finally spoke. Majesty, perhaps the ritual was misapplied. The human may not even comprehend the bond. Daniel raised a brow. Buddy, I comprehend just fine. Your law says one thing. My law says another. On Earth, we call that a cultural misunderstanding. Usually we fix those with awkward handshakes and too much potato salad. Potato salad? The advisor asked, bewildered. Daniel grinned. Yeah. You don't want to know. The queen waved the advisor silent. Her attention remained locked on Daniel. You speak as though you were harmless. Yet my instincts tell me otherwise. Daniel set his mug down on the railing. His eyes, for the first time, hardened. The humor dimmed just enough for steel to show beneath. Harmless is the last thing we are, Your Majesty. We're polite. We're friendly. But harmless? He shook his head slowly. No. Not by a long shot. The warriors shifted again, uneasy. The general scowled but didn't advance. The queen tilted her head, intrigued. You cloak threats in courtesy. Daniel smiled again, warmth restored. It's called being civilized. You should try it sometime. Silence stretched. The queen studied him, torn between disdain and fascination. Finally, she gestured, and her entourage retreated a few paces. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Tell me the truth, Daniel Cole. What are you really doing on this frontier world? No one as sharp as you chooses exile without reason. Daniel's gaze flicked briefly skyward. Then back to her. Fixing things, he said. Waiting for the right timing. Timing for what? He shrugged. That would be telling. Her eyes narrowed, but she caught the subtle shift in his stance, the way he glanced at the horizon, like a man expecting company. You expect someone, she said. Maybe, Daniel replied. Or maybe I just like stargazing. Helps pass the time between water bonding ceremonies. The Queen's lips curved again, the faintest smirk. You are impossible. Daniel lifted his mug in a mock toast. Compliment accepted. The tension didn't ease, but it shifted, less about intimidation now, more about curiosity. The Queen's entourage muttered among themselves, debating what this encounter meant. Finally, the Queen gave a single command in her own language. Her guards knelt. She remained standing, regal and unbowed, but her words carried an edge of concession. Very well, Daniel Cole. You gave my child water. By our law, that binds you to me. Whether you accept it or not, you are under my protection and my scrutiny. Daniel chuckled. Protection, huh? That's sweet. But here's the thing, humans don't do leashes. A ripple of discomfort ran through the warriors again. The Queen studied him, unsettled but intrigued. You risk much by speaking so boldly. Daniel shrugged. Risk keeps life interesting. Otherwise it's just coffee and broken machinery. The Queen's eyes gleamed. Then perhaps you and I will keep each other very interested. Daniel smiled, but his eyes betrayed a flash of calculation, measuring, waiting. Maybe, he said softly. And above them, the stars shifted, just enough for Daniel's glance upward to mean something more. Chapter 3, The Duel of Misconceptions. The Queen's entourage bristled, murmuring in their language, claws flexing over weapon hilts. Daniel could feel the temperature of the moment shift from curiosity to volatility. It was only a matter of time before someone snapped. That someone turned out to be the general. Towering, scarred, plated in ceremonial armor, the general had been chewing on Daniel's calmness like gristle stuck in his teeth. He finally stepped forward, blade unsheathed with a metallic growl. This insolence cannot stand, the general declared. His voice rattled the street's walls. Majesty, allow me to test this human's worth. If he survives, he may keep his tongue. If not, the matter ends. The Queen regarded him coolly. You would risk spilling blood here? The general's eyes never left Daniel. Better to spill it now than let it fester. Daniel sighed, setting his mug down. I was hoping to finish my coffee before somebody tried to kill me. Guess caffeine will have to wait. The warriors laughed cruelly, mistaking humor for bravado. The Queen tilted her head, studying him. Do you accept? Daniel rolled his shoulders, as if limbering up for a bar fight. Why not? Beats paperwork. The crowd of aliens formed a circle in the dusty street. Torches ignited, casting jagged shadows. Daniel stood at the center, unarmed, hands loose at his sides. The general raised his curved blade high, confident and theatrical. You mock us, human. Do you think wit is armor? Daniel smiled faintly. Armor's overrated. I prefer agility and good timing. Works in chess, works in life. The general lunged, blade flashing downward. Daniel moved. Not like a brawler, not like prey. He sidestepped with fluid precision, hands snapping out to grab the general's wrist. In one swift motion, he twisted, redirected, and the massive warrior crashed into the dirt. Dust exploded. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Daniel dusted off his hands. First move's free. You're welcome. The general roared, springing up with inhuman speed, blade slashing sideways. Daniel ducked, rolled, and came up behind him. A quick heel kick struck the back of the general's knee, sending him stumbling again. Daniel clucked his tongue. Balance, my friend. It's all about balance. You might want to practice yoga. The crowd erupted in confusion, half jeers, half awe. The Queen's eyes gleamed, fascinated. The general, furious, charged again. This time Daniel caught the blade arm mid-swing, yanked him forward, and drove an elbow into the warrior's chest plate. The clang rang like a gong. The general staggered, breath knocked out. Daniel stepped back, hands raised as if bored. Look, we can keep doing this until you sprain something important, or you can admit swords aren't everything. Your call. The general spat, humiliated. His eyes burned with murderous rage. But before he could lunge again, the Queen lifted a hand. Enough. The word cracked the air sharper than any blade. The general froze, chest heaving. Daniel exhaled, picked up his mug from the railing, and sipped what was left. Cold coffee. He grimaced. Figures. Always cold when the fun ends. The warriors murmured louder now, unsettled. Whispers flew. Asterisk, how does a human move like that? Why does he show no fear? Asterisk. The Queen stepped into the circle, her gaze locked on Daniel. You are no mechanic. Daniel gave her a half-smile. I fix things. Tonight, I fixed your general's ego. You're welcome. The general growled, but the Queen silenced him with a glance. She leaned closer to Daniel, her voice low, dangerous. You hide your skill, your intent. Why? Daniel's tone turned polite but razor-edged. Because nothing makes people underestimate you faster than acting harmless. And underestimated is a good place to be. The Queen tilted her head. You admit deception openly? He shrugged. It's not deception. It's survival. Wolves don't announce themselves before the hunt. Her eyes narrowed, but there was a flicker of respect in them. The surrounding warriors shifted uncomfortably, sensing a conversation layered far deeper than they understood. The advisor stepped forward, anxious. Majesty, this one is dangerous. He must be contained before. Daniel cut him off with a polite smile. Careful. Containment sounds like a leash, and I already mentioned, humans don't do leashes. That landed like thunder. The advisor recoiled. Even the Queen drew a sharper breath. Daniel turned his gaze skyward for the briefest second. The stars shimmered. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. The Queen noticed. You wait for something, she said. Daniel didn't deny it. He only took another sip and said, Timing's everything. Timing for what? Depends on how friendly you want this evening to end. The Queen studied him for a long moment. Then she dismissed the circle with a flick of her hand. Warriors dispersed reluctantly, throwing Daniel wary glances. The general stalked away, humiliated but cowed. Now it was just the Queen, the child peeking from behind her, and Daniel with his empty mug. The Queen's voice softened but carried weight. My instincts tell me you are far more than you claim. You fight like a soldier, yet you speak like a diplomat. Which mask is real? Daniel's answer was quiet, measured. Both. Neither. Depends on the audience. And what audience do you perform for now? Daniel met her gaze, and for a heartbeat the humor dropped entirely. His eyes held steel, cold and calculating. For you, your majesty. And whoever's watching from orbit. The Queen froze, realization dawning. From orbit? Daniel set down the mug, folded his arms, and said nothing. His silence was louder than any boast. Moments later, distant rumbles rolled across the night sky. Not thunder. Engines. Faint glimmers began to appear, high above the stars. Shapes slowly forming. The Queen's warriors turned their eyes upward, uneasy. Daniel finally spoke, his tone calm, almost casual. "Any minute now." The Queen stepped closer, voice sharp. "What have you brought upon us?" Daniel met her gaze, smile polite, words edged. "Not upon you. Upon everyone who keeps underestimating humanity." Chapter 4, The Invitation. The first engines whispered across the heavens like thunder from a storm not yet visible. Then the whispers deepened into roars, shaking windows and stirring dust from the street. The Queen's warriors raised their weapons instinctively. Shadows of vast shapes rippled across the stars, blotting out constellations with impossible geometry. Daniel stood calm at the center of the storm, mud dangling in his hand, as if the entire spectacle had been penciled into his calendar. The Queen's eyes narrowed. "What have you summoned?" Daniel tilted his head. "Summoned? No. Arranged. There's a difference. Summoning implies magic. Arrangements are just good planning." Her claws flexed at her sides. "You brought a fleet." "Technically, it brought itself." Daniel's smile was thin. "Humans are punctual. We get itchy when we're late." Above them, the veil of the night sky peeled back. One by one, warships emerged from cloak. They weren't sleek like the Queen's vessel, they were brutish, angular, painted with names in block letters: USS Apple Pie, USS Big Lebowski, USS Independence. The colony streets erupted with panicked shouts. Aliens scrambled indoors, shutters slamming. Warriors hissed, circling tighter around the Queen. The child clung to her leg, wide-eyed. The Queen didn't flinch, but her jaw tightened. "This is an act of war." Daniel shook his head. "No, Your Majesty. This is an act of honesty. You came to my door asking why I was. Consider this my answer." The lead ship projected a beam of light, and a voice crackled through the air, calm, formal, unmistakably human. "Daniel Cole, status check." Daniel raised his mug in salute. "Right on schedule, Captain. Coffee's cold, but otherwise can't complain." The voice replied, dryly amused. "Copy that. Standing by for your word." Every alien warrior froze. The Queen's gaze cut back to Daniel, sharp as a blade. "You command them?" "Not command," Daniel said. "Coordinate. We don't do kings or queens. We do teams. Works better in the long run." Her voice was low, dangerous. "You lured me here." Daniel didn't bother denying it. "Hospitality, remember? I set the table. You showed up right on cue." The general, still nursing humiliation from the duel, snarled and lunged. "Kill him now before more come." Daniel didn't move. The Queen's hand shot out, stopping the general mid-stride. She wasn't certain anymore who held the advantage. She turned back to Daniel. "What do you want?" Daniel finally set the mug aside. His voice lost the lightness, replaced with something colder, deliberate. "Not conquest. Not slavery. Humanity's been down those roads before, and we don't like the taste. What we want is respect. Recognition. And the galaxy's bad habit of treating us like strays, that ends tonight." The Queen studied him. "You mean to intimidate the galaxy with theatrics?" Daniel shook his head slowly. "No. Intimidation fades. Memory doesn't. You and your people will remember what you saw here. You'll tell others. And little by little, the idea spreads, humans aren't to be dismissed. Not because we're loud, not because we're many, because we prepare. Because we smile while we sharpen the knife." The Queen's child peeked up at Daniel again, eyes curious instead of afraid. It tugged gently at her hand, chirping softly. The Queen hushed it, but her gaze softened for the first time since she landed. She returned her focus to Daniel. "And if I refuse this invitation?" Daniel nodded upward. The silhouettes of warships blotted out half the stars now. "Then you'll learn why wolves don't need to roar to hunt." The queen let the silence stretch. Her guards shifted uneasily, every one of them sensing the weight pressing down from the skies. Finally, she asked, "Why cloak your strength in jokes and smiles? Why not show your teeth from the beginning?" Daniel's eyes hardened. "Because monsters out in the open get hunted. Monsters in plain sight get destroyed. But the smiling neighbor? The friendly mechanic? He survives. He waits. And when the time comes, he chooses when to show his teeth." Her breath caught, and for a moment she saw him clearly, not the genial man with coffee, but the tactician who'd planned this entire stage. The fleet overhead adjusted, thrusters glowing. Not weapons fire, just presence. A demonstration. Daniel's voice was quiet but heavy. "You walked into this thinking you'd measure me. Turns out, I was measuring you. And now you've got a choice. Walk away respecting us, or walk away pretending not to, and pray we don't notice." The queen's claws curled, then relaxed. She knew what a trap felt like, and she knew when the only escape was through grace. She straightened, regal once more, and addressed him. "Very well, Daniel Cole. You have your recognition. Tonight, I depart not as conqueror, but as witness. But mark this, wolves may smile, yet tigers still hunt." Daniel chuckled softly. "Fair enough. Just remember, wolves hunt in packs." Her entourage began retreating toward the ship. The general lingered, glaring daggers, but a single glance from the queen silenced him. The child glanced back once at Daniel, chirping quietly, before disappearing into the vessel. Engines roared, and the queen's ship lifted, vanishing into the stars. The colony exhaled in one collective breath. Windows creaked open, frightened faces peering out. Daniel finally set down his mug with a sigh. "Well, that was exhausting. And the coffee's ruined." The beam from the lead human ship lit up again. "Status clear, Daniel?" "Clear," he replied. "Send down fresh supplies next run. Maybe a decent coffee maker this time." The comm crackled with laughter. "Copy that." The fleet began to drift, cloaks flickering back into place until they were shadows again, then gone. Alone on the street, Daniel stretched, rolled his shoulders, and muttered to himself. Hydration, coffee, interstellar diplomacy. All in a day's work. He picked up his mug and turned back toward his workshop. From orbit to dust, the galaxy had learned something tonight. Humanity smiled, joked, and played polite. But beneath the grin, there was always calculation. Always the pack. Always the hidden teeth. Daniel sipped the last bitter mouthful and smirked. "So, Your Majesty," he murmured to the night, "still think I'm just the guy with a watering can?"